future.
Every episode of X-Men 97 has managed to surprise us with new details, and the endings ensure that we are hyped about the next episode. This week, we finally got some clarity on the aftermath of the Genosha Massacre, and again, there was a twisted place right at the end of the episode. Even though Bastion's reveal as the person responsible for the massacre killed a lot of fan theories, the fact that Magneto had survived and is under his captivity came as an absolute shock to the fans. While we wait for the next episode to reveal what he has in his plans, let's look at the other timeline in the comic books when Bastion had held Xavier captive so he can have an idea of what he might do. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
Roll! Get to the gardens! Hurry!
Magneto is alive. There was a lot of confusion amongst fans following Episode 5, the Remember It episode, since there was no clarity about the number of mutants killed during the attack at Genosha. Assumptions were made regarding the status of some of our favorite mutants, including Gambit, Magneto, and even Madeline Pryor. Later episodes gave some clarity when we finally got to see the X-Men visit the site of the massacre, even though Episode 6 came as an absolute twist and revealed that Xavier was still alive and was about to marry Lilandra. He canceled that after the status of his X-Men following the massacre at Genosha. But the latest episode has added another revelation. Bastion is holding Magneto captive. The last time we saw Magneto was in the 5th episode, and he was undergoing many exciting developments. Representatives of Genosha had offered him the role of Chancellor, and he wanted to pursue it with Rogue. Meanwhile, Rogue had problems since she had to confess her past with Magneto to Gambit, who wasn't taking it very quickly, but gave in after coming to terms with a bond that they shared. Even though it seemed like she would agree to Magneto's offer during the gala, she denied it, and it was right after that that the Sentinels attacked Genosha. They were considering that it came out of nowhere, where the X-Men were wholly unprepared and had to face the brutal attack of their enemy. Magneto stood alone opposite the Sentinels and kept hitting it with all he had, even though it wasn't proving effective. Gambit also joined the fight and managed to save a couple of young mutants who all tried to regroup, but the Sentinel discovered and aimed at them as Magneto wanted to protect them. A single energy beam was struck at them, and Rogue and Gambit tried to come to help, but he removed them and bound them at a safe distance. Rogue realized that it would not work for long, and she tried to free herself, only to see that Magneto wanted to provide them with even more protection while trying to prevent the energy beam from hitting them. Before the energy beam went through the shield, Magneto looked at the young mutant with him and said, "Don't be afraid." Following this, Gambit went on an all-out attack against the Sentinel, and he was successful for a while before the Sentinel killed him. It became pretty apparent that both Magneto and Gambit had sacrificed themselves in the battle against the Sentinels. Even the following episodes stopped showing them the opening titles where they appeared with their names. This sacrifice hit Rogue the most, considering that she had lost the two people she held closest to her, so she went on a ruthless rampage in the latest episode. Even though there was a funeral for Gambit, Magneto's survival was an absolute surprise for the viewers. Around the end of the episode, we find that Bastion is responsible for the Genosha Massacre and reveals his plans for the mutants. Right before the credits, Bastion enters a barbershop, plays the song People Eater by The Purple, and heads to one of the chairs. Here we see Magneto, who is bound to the chair, and then Bastion starts shaving him while telling him how heat softens the human skin. It looks as if Bastion is preparing Magneto for something that might threaten the X-Men in the future. That one time Bastion captured Professor X like Magneto. Even though this scene was an absolute surprise, Bastion has a history of gruesome acts against the mutants. And just like we saw him holding Magneto captive, there was a time in the comic books when he held Professor Xavier captive. Bastion is a humanoid created with the sole objective of killing mutants, and he can go to any extent to do this. He is a fusion of Nimrod and Master Mold formed during a fight with the X-Men. Bastion orchestrated the entire conversion of the humans into prime sentinels that could eradicate humankind. The most significant step he has taken towards his crusade against the mutants is Operation Zero Tolerance. But before jumping into this event, we must know about the absolute chaos that Onslaught was and how this provoked and helped push forward Bastion's plans of killing the mutants. During one of the usual battles between Magneto and the X-Men, Magneto pulled out all the adamantium from Wolverine's body. In response, Xavier decided to shut down his mind, but in the process, some of Magneto's evil has made it itself home in Xavier's mind, forming a whole new being inside them, called himself Onslaught. The Onslaught caused absolute mayhem with the death of most of the Avengers, and even the loss of the powers of the X-Men. This even caught Bastion's eye now that he had a new candidate for Operation Zero Tolerance. After accepting his actions, Xavier surrendered to the authorities and went to Valerie Cooper to seek redemption, but Bastion got hold of him and took him to his high-security facility, where he was kept a prisoner. Based on Bastion's suspicions about Xavier, a psi shield was put over him. Even though Xavier hadn't revealed the secret about Onslaught to anyone, Bastion knew that Xavier had a role in the entire thing that unfolded with him. Xavier was interrogated and treated even though he had surrendered under his consent. One of the other inmates of this prison was a child named Nina, who had a lot of untapped powers due to her mutation. Xavier realized that she was not a product of natural birth and was created in the prison facility itself. Bastion's hatred towards the mutant became more apparent when he continuously referred to the young kids as it instead of another being. However, she could read minds and started communicating with Xavier, and Xavier realized she was in danger inside this facility. With the help of the interrogator who was brought to interrogate him, he managed to get her outside of the facility in safe hands. But this was only a slight hint towards the crazy things that Bastion had been experimenting with inside his secret facility. There was so much secrecy here that the fact Nina had managed to slip out of prison faking her death was kept suppressed because people were supposed to go on with their duties, no questions asked. Henry Gyrick was one of the heads of operations in the facility. The number of questions he asked regarding Xavier being held in the facility annoyed Bastion greatly. However, the fact that Bastion is more concerned with Xavier's involvement in the Onslaught event clarifies that Bastion won't hold back when he tries to achieve his goal of killing the mutant race. If he had discovered what had triggered the creation of Onslaught, he would have weaponized him and used him to complete his mission. What could be the reason behind Bastion's capture of Magneto? Is it a strategic move, or does it hint at a deeper plot? The fact that Bastion intended to use Xavier in his plans to kill the mutants becomes very obvious with X-Men 97-2. Now that he has Magneto in captivity, we are left wondering what his next plans will be. Even though his tone makes it very clear that he intends to use Magneto in the next attack on the mutants. As a part of this Operation Zero Tolerance, Bastion succeeded in creating the Prime Sentinels. The very first time we witnessed this was when Rogue let Bolivar Trask fall off the roof following his suicide attempt after being blamed for the Genosha Massacre. Even though the X-Men assumed he was dead, Trask flew up and was now in his Prime Sentinel form. Fighting him was difficult for the X-Men as they were continuously defeated, only to be helped by Cable, who might have a significant arc in the series now. But imagine if Magneto was subjected to nanotechnology instead of a human being subjected to the Prime Sentinel program. Considering Bastion was seen shaving him, was he preparing Magneto for the procedure that would convert him to his mutant-killing form? Once he completes the procedure, Bastion can simply erase Magneto's memories and return him to the X-Men, who weren't aware that he is alive. Once they are in an unsuspecting situation, Bastion can simply trigger the Prime Sentinel form, and then Magneto can prove to be much worse than something even Cable couldn't manage to put down. This type of secret infiltration was recently seen in the series when Mr. Sinister revealed that he had cloned Jean Grey, the version that we have seen so far, Madeline Pryor. Mr. Sinister is working with Bastion, so he would know how to help him sneak their Prime Sentinel, added with the powers of Magneto amid the unsuspecting X-Men. But another detail was revealed in this episode. Bastion knows Xavier's status. He might use Magneto to trap Xavier, hold him captive, and use Xavier's powers to fulfill his goals instead. It would be quite the move, and it would prove to be much more devastating for the X-Men, considering they had just started coping with the loss of Xavier a few days back, hadn't managed to work correctly, and had lost many of their members too. In the comics, Bastion almost succeeded with his plan of Operation Zero Tolerance, but he was stopped at the very last minute and later put into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody. However, the events impacted the X-Men, Cyclops and Jean Grey, who had left the group for a while, with new members joining the team. Either way, Bastion has the upper hand, and Mr. Sinister, his ally, makes the enemy more difficult. The last time a giant event hooked us to the animated series was when the Days of Future Past arc was adapted into the series. Bastion going against the X-Men at a time like this might take events to a similar level to that time. The heroes are vulnerable at this moment due to the multiple losses they have faced, and Bastion will use this situation to strike hard and ruthlessly. Bastion can bring Banshee back to life and use him against the X-Men, and considering Rogue hasn't had a chance to deal with her losses, it would be a fatal blow to them. But Cable might be a key to defeating Bastion, as he had appeared the last time just a few minutes before Genosha would be attacked. Similarly, in the latest episode, he appears when Bolivar Trask's Prime Sentinel form beats up the mutants. Cable might have some secret connection with Bastion, as he traveled back in time 2 times, and one of these times the X-Men almost faced defeat. Marvelous verdict. With a few more episodes left, we can only wonder where the series might go with this Bastion arc. The only thing we can hope for is the final episode not to have another open ending, considering it took us quite a long time to see our favorite group of heroes in action in the animated series, with appearances from Captain America and Thaddeus Ross. Seeing them spring into action and help the X-Men should be enjoyable. Fans might remember when Wolverine went against the Red Skull next to Captain America in what was considered one of the most significant crossover events in the animated series. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
Mutants neutralized.